Hello and welcome back to another episode of Broker's Playbook. My name is Simeon Papalias, your host, and my amazing and incredible co-host Laura Martin is joining me today with a powerhouse in the mortgage business, Dustan Woodhouse. Dustan, welcome to the show. Laura, welcome to the show. And to all our brothers and sisters, a big, big hello from Toronto on this amazing last day of November.
And a shout out from the West Coast. Hey.
Yes. All right.
Dustan, where are you at? Tell us all about what you're up to, my man.
And I'm based in Vancouver, just geographically speaking. So gotta throw that shout out in there.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So today we are talking to Dustan, who is absolute, unrivaled thought leader in the mortgage industry. He really cut his teeth as a broker, doing over 100 deals a year. And then he decided, from the goodness of his heart,
200, come on.
Fair enough. Who does a deal every other day? It's like far more like a deal a day. Okay, so thank you, though. So ridiculous volume from this guy. And then he says, you know what? I'm going to write a book about how I did this out of the goodness of my heart, so I can help all these newbies in the mortgage industry get their head around what they're doing, tell them about best practices. I've read some excerpts from it, and there's absolute gems just like packed with them. And you really bring brokering to life with these books. You now have 2 volumes of it out there. You've got third edition has hit the shelves. So it's so widely received. There's 3 volumes of this thing. It's a perfect trilogy. Congratulations on your authorship success. And you've really made an indelible contribution to the industry in doing so. My question is, what inspired you to pivot from raking in the dough, doing deals, to thought leadership, to education?
Well, let's back up a second. Then you referred to the goodness of my heart. You're going to blow my reputation as a guy that has no heart.
Yeah.
A cold little black lump of stone where my heart should be. In a nutshell, as much of a nutshell as I'm capable of, I think it was 2014. And I had lunch with somebody from head office, and I was saying, hey, who have you got coming up to speak this year at the agent universities? Like, who's getting up there and telling us how to save our file when, a banker is coming after it or whatever, like how to not get our lunch eaten. And, a lot of these different events over the years, there's all kinds of different speakers, but very rarely do you get an actual broker up there who's in the business.
Practicing broker.
Right? A practicing broker saying, here's what I'm dealing with today, and here's how I dealt with it. And, the reason for that is because a lot of people are really great speakers, and a lot of people are really great at brokering, but it's not always that simple to find the hybrid. And I had 0 track record speaking. So they were very nervous to put me up on stage. And in fact, I know that they didn't book my flights to do the cross Canada chunk of the tour until about 2 weeks before those dates. And they had a backup speaker set to go because they wanted to see how did I do with the first couple in our own backyard here. And luckily it went fairly well. But the first presentation I built was like 400 slides. And I realized I just built an outline for a book. And I filed that in the back of my head. And anyway, I carved the presentation down to about 180 slides, which I delivered in 60 or 70 minutes, like just boom, boom, boom. And the presentation went over really well. I really enjoyed the microphone. I loved the audience. Like, I've never met a microphone I didn't like. So I was hooked on the presentation piece. The book really wasn't written out of the goodness of my heart, nor was it written with the idea that there would ever be any kind of profit from it. In fact, it took over 5 years before I tipped into the black on the 3 books total, despite selling like 20,000 copies. It's just, there's a lot of costs in the background. And I remember joking in 2015 when I wrote the first book saying, well, it was buy a Tesla or write this book.
Yeah.
So I spent the money on the book and kept driving the Ford F-150 for an extra 5 years.
Nice.
Basically. And the book really came out, especially volume 1. Like volume 1 is for somebody generally not in the business or just stepping into the business. Although I get a lot of people 20 years in the business who read it and go, man, and realtors as well. I get a lot of realtors that read it and go, man, this is like some really great foundational stuff. Like this is the stuff that got me to where I am, and I've forgotten to keep doing something.
Dustin, tell us a little bit about those principles that you cover, man.
Well, I mean, the very first thing I think that the first book gets across, and my father proofread it for me and said, geez, kid, if you say brokering's difficult once, you say it 25 times. Like you just hit people over the head with how hard the industry is. But I think that's a really important message. Like, Simeon, I mean, so you're a realtor and you've probably had a close friend who says, man, I'm going to become a mortgage broker. And maybe you choose to be raw and honest with them right up front. Like, hey, that's great. But just so you know, I'm never sending you a client, not in the first year, probably not in the first 2 years.
Burn.
Because my reputation is like way up here right now because I'm operating at this intense level. And I can't afford to hand my precious client to a stone cold rookie. So even though we're bros and we go back years, and the thing is, not a lot of realtors and referral partners are that raw and honest. So you see brokers coming in all the time. Oh yeah, my cousin's niece's uncle is a realtor and he's going to send me all this business. And it's like, no, he's not.
Nah.
And even if they do, the math is really about 10 to 1. For every 10 ends a realtor closes, that realtor's broker who they're tight with will close 1. The really, really high, super tight-knit relationship on a high level, 5 to 1. That's over and over. I've quizzed realtors and brokers alike across the country on that one. That's the ratio.
Would you say that's true?
Yes, absolutely, it's true. Because not every client needs a broker. A lot of them have established relationships. A lot of them have their own relationships. And 1 in 5, in my opinion, is spot on with what I feed into my broker channel relationships. And,
right.
and I have 3 of them, and I give them probably, I don't know, 20, 30 deals a year each out of 300 that we do, me and my partner. So it's dead on, spot on.
Yeah, there you go. 60 out of 300, right? 5 to 1.
Yeah.
There it is.
And as a mortgage agent, any kind of deal that you get, there, in your rookie years, you got a 10% closing ratio. And once you're seasoned and you factored in the 1,000 ways to die, maybe 30% to 40%.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think it gets a little higher than that, but your numbers.
We're dealing with internet leads.
That's raw and honest. Like it's you can exceed that, but not very many people will.
Dustin, are you able to give us some nuggets? Give us some advice as to I love anybody who's written a book because it's a structured way of passing your message. So you've written a book, which is huge. I do have the aspiration of doing the same at one point in my life. I'm not sure when I'm going to have the time, but it is something that's on my mind that I want to do because I do feel I can bring a lot of value that way, but you have done it. So tell me, what are the principles, the founding, let's call it pillars of that your book is founded on?
Well, I wound up writing a 3-part series, basically. And as I say, that first book was really written the exact opposite of what you might say is the goodness of my heart. I was getting a call a day. Hey man, you got time to go have a coffee and talk to me about this mortgage brokering thing? Because I'm interested. And it was like, man, I am so up to my eyeballs in clients. Like I was the face and the voice of 200 plus transactions a year. I didn't have time. I wanted to, but I didn't have time. And the idea was, okay, the 500 hours I put into this book, which I thought, was only going to be like 100 hours. But by the time the smoke cleared, that book is a 50,000 word coffee meeting. Like, here's every question you could ever ask about his career. Here it all is. Like, read the book, and if you still want to have coffee, okay, call me. And of course, 19 out of 20 people, they either get scared away from the industry from the book, or they get all their questions answered. And that 1 in 20, follows up and reaches out. It's maybe more like 1 in 100. And the second book was more like, okay, now you're in the business. So structure-wise, I carried the chapter count on. So the first book was chapters 1 through 20. The second book started at chapter 21 and carried on. And it was, okay, now you're in the business. What are some landmines you're almost certainly going to step on? Because I've stepped on them. And here's the stories. Like, learn from my mistakes. Don't make these mistakes yourself. Like, ask hard questions. Like, we'll use Simeon as the example here. Hey, Simeon, I'm looking at your credit bureau here, and you're 42 years old, and I see nothing. Forgive me if you're younger than 42, Simeon.
41. I'm 41.
41. I was close. You're 41 years old, and all your credit looks like it started 4 years ago, and it's like you had nothing prior to that. Now, there's usually a story there, and you gotta ask. You gotta ask, and depending on who's sitting across from you or who you're Zooming with, that can be an uncomfortable question to ask.
And spoiler alert, they probably had a bankruptcy scrub from their record recently.
Or in the case of one gentleman who was sitting live across from me, they were in prison for several years. And
all right.
I got that story, and that was pretty interesting. And it was,
that happens.
But it happens. That's the thing. People don't realize when you're in real estate, well, mortgage broker is real estate. When you're in this business, you're literally hitting head on life head on. Every single person we interact with is looking to solve their housing needs.
Yeah.
Whether they're renting, buying, refinancing, getting their first mortgage or their 50th mortgage, you're dealing with their housing or financial needs in the most intimate way possible. Yes. There is no secrets from your mortgage broker.
Ideally, no. Yeah. And if there are, there's problems.
You can get away with it once, but like really and truly, your mortgage broker, if they don't know you, they cannot service you to the best of your situation.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have the whole story.
You're only cheating yourself.
Yeah, we're like the financial priest, and that gentleman was not reflective of my overall database at large. He was a referral from a very important, influential person in the business community who had an overlap through another organization they were both members of, and this guy had paid his dues and served his time, and was moving on in life, trying to better himself, and was in a position where he thought he might be able to buy something. And yeah, so you learn a lot of lessons. So you learn to ask those hard questions. And then that third book is really the arc of a file. From ring, what's your best rate, which is the opening question that 99% of clients have, which is like the least important question to answer initially. There's about 90 other questions that matter a lot more than the rate. And then it circles all the way through the entire arc of the process to file complete. And that third one is really the textbook that doesn't really exist in our industry. And that's what drove me to write those additional books was,
hell yes,
there's nothing else out there. I mean, maybe they're not the greatest, but they're kind of the only thing in the Canadian mortgage space that says, here's what remaining economic life is. Here's what a mortgage finance company is. Here's why you might look at a credit union, and here's why you might not look at a credit union. There's all these things that just they don't get taught.
And the course, I don't know, Simeon, if you know this or if other realtors know this, the course is 2 days between 10 and 4 virtually with a little bit of self-study in between. The exam consists of 60 multiple choice questions, and you only need a 60% to pass.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's obviously ridiculous that you are trusted with people's finances after that. But then what's worse is, you have nothing in this curriculum that explains how to actually do a mortgage.
Yeah, the actual licensing is, it's very interesting. So it varies from province to province.
Yeah, for Ontario.
Some provinces, it's, a couple $100 and a 1-week course and boom, you're licensed. And they have an attrition rate in the high 90s. 96% of newly licensed brokers in Ontario will not renew their license at the 2-year mark.
No way.
96%. Like that was the last time we ran through the numbers as best as we could. That's what we came up with. It drops all the way down as low as 30% won't renew, like 60 stay in the game. In provinces like Quebec, BC less so, Alberta in particular. Alberta and Quebec probably have the most rigid, highest standards. You're paying many thousands of dollars to go through the course. It's a protracted period of time, 6 months. And just natural selection in that 6 months of going through the course,
Okay.
people just self-select out of the industry. In Ontario, it's just so fast before they even had time to sort of sober up and think, should I be a broker? They're a broker. They're an agent. The linguistics are a little different from province to province as well. But yeah, you're a licensed mortgage agent in Ontario before you've even had time to think twice. And so that, the results are obvious.
I definitely think the barrier to entry has a lot to do with the quality and scope of the agent and their ability to stay in the business. I am very happy with Aurea going away with teaching the course online and taking it to Humber, where it's a 1 year process at this point, 6 months to a year to get through the licensing. And it will definitely bring the number of part-time people thinking that it's just what a great thing to have on the side.
Real estate is not a side business.
Like the fact that you believe that you can bring value to somebody's biggest transaction as an afterthought is fundamentally demented.
Yes.
So if you're going to do it on the side, this is my side hustle. So am I getting what? Your 10% leftover energy of the day?
Yeah.
And you're going to tell people that this is your side hustle?
Yeah. We do not hire, we don't hire part-timers. Like it's not an option.
And I'm not saying to anyone, don't be a part-timer. Like this is an industry podcast, but if you think you can compete against me as a broker, because I'm a practicing broker, like this show is our gift to the industry to bring guys like you, Dustan, and gals like Laura to share their insight. Mm-hmm. But if any part-timer thinks they would have a chance against me at a listing presentation, you're sadly mistaken. I will eat you for breakfast.
Yes. And to be fair, a dual licensed realtor / broker, they can be successful to the level of success they desire. I'll agree with that. But I don't know about you. I don't think I've ever seen a dual licensed broker / realtor number one in the office.
In either. In either category. You're not going to win at both.
Yeah, it's not a thing. I mean, focus, right? I did a little monologue this morning, and I talked about sharks. Sharks have survived 100 million years with no technological evolution. 100 million years. Why? Relentless focus on a single objective. They're going to kill something and eat it today. Mm-hmm. Period. The end. That's all a shark's purpose is. And when you start trying to do multiple things, it just ain't going to work out, right? Like, be a shark, be focused, be relentless.
Yeah.
You can only dilute your value proposition so much. You can only do so much. Staying in your lane is by far the biggest advice that we hear from every single thought leader, bar none, Dustan, is to make sure that you're working on whether it's revenue or branding or whatever it is that you're focused on at the time. If you're focused on your brand, build your brand. You're focused on revenue, build revenue. But your activities have to follow suit. You cannot be working on brand and expecting your revenue to go up if you're only putting social posts up. You got to do the work.
Yep.
You also can't expect your brand to shine and elevate your revenue without putting some focus there. But unless it's structured, intentional, and relentless, those are the key words. The shark didn't evolve because he's relentless. He doesn't need to evolve. He's going to eat it today. He doesn't have to get skinnier on the one side to fit through the hole to make it.
Yeah. And can you have it all? Yes, but you need to delegate those other things, right? 100%. And so that's what's up. Do what you are great at, and anything that anyone can do about 80% as well as you let that shit go.
That's one of my favorite sayings. And think about like whether it's real estate or brokering. If you really look at the most successful people, they all have people assisting them, right? They're strengthening their strengths, they're outsourcing their weaknesses.
Yeah.
Right? Like Simeon, you mentioned the listing presentation, right? Like you're not outsourcing the listing presentation. You are the man doing that. Sure. But at the end of the day, there's a bunch of other background tasks that need to happen to keep an office functioning, right? Somebody's got to make the coffee in the morning, and that's probably not you. You outsource that to somebody else because more and more of your time and energy and your focus is on delivering the best listing presentation you can possibly deliver. And anything that isn't that, someone else does. That's so the very notion that someone could partake in a whole other job. I mean, there's very few roles in society now that don't become highly specialized as you get to the top of the field, and you're building a team out under you of people doing other things within that specific role, just so you can really narrow your focus, right?
Yep.
I absolutely love where you're going with this. This is, again, you're echoing what we reinforce almost every single show that we put on. And if our audience isn't starting to pick up a pattern, I would be damned. That pattern, Dustin, is very, very simple. And again, I will drive this home till the end of days, because every single day there is a new listener, there is a new agent, there's a new broker who thinks they're going to change things, they're going to make things different, they're going to find the new blue pill online that is going to circumvent them having to get on the phone. So this is what I'll say again and again. Dustin came on this. He has written 3 books, 3 phases to his concept and how he built his livelihood. And anybody who thinks doing a couple hundred deals a year is easy, rest assured, you're just not in the business long enough to know and appreciate it, because that's a 14 to 16 hour day as far as I'm concerned.
100%.
Yeah, I probably drilled it down to about 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, with a full-time associate doing all the back-end underwriting and docs prep and everything else. So the 2 of us, yeah, I mean, there was 16 hours a day of work being done between the 2 of us. But that also was over a period of years where systems and process really got hit home. And where I fine-tuned that opening phone call into like 15 to 20 minutes max. And we're either helping you one way by processing a mortgage for you, or we're helping you another way, and we're done in, 2 out of 4 calls would be done in 15 minutes or less. And that was that for the better part of a year or 2 before you could bring that client back into your orbit. The other 2, we got something we're going to try and make happen, and one of them is going to actually close. And again, it's recognizing those stats. Like 3 out of 4 people who phone you, that's not going to be a mortgage that funds, but you got to treat all 4 of them as if it is going to fund.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you got to go the distance, and you can't just cut bait and run as soon as you get the slightest little, I think this isn't going to work. You got to put maximum effort in to the end of every relationship there is. And in my view, relationships don't have an end. There's either people working with me right now, or there's people who are going to be working with me. That's it. 2 types of people in the world.
I absolutely love that mindset. Dustin, how are you using technology to your advantage? Do you have system implementations that bring your 3-year renewals up automatically? Do you have every 6 months a concierge making calls, reminding them of what's happening? How do you bring value using technology today? And what platform are you using, if so?
I didn't really give you my full bio here, Simeon. So about 3 years ago, I stepped away from day-to-day brokering, and I'm actually currently the president of one of the fastest growing, I think the fastest growing national network in the country. So I'm now the president of Mortgage Architects. So I've got 1,857 agents, brokers that I'm interacting with on a daily basis. So tech-wise, some of the things I'm doing, though, to interact with my agents and my brokers, it would be the same thing I would be doing if I were a broker to interact with my clients. And that would include, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 days a week. I go live at the same time, 3 days a week. Mondays, I do a live mastermind session, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's live with a guest or a monologue. Try and keep them short and sweet, 10, 12 minutes on what's happening in the market. What's happening in BC with this cooling off period? What's this nonsense that one economist has said there's going to be 8 rate hikes in the next 2 years? Pure fiction.
It's crazy.
By the way, economists have been making that exact prediction for 10 years running and have never been right. And here they are making it again. So clients are starved, brokers and agents are starved, clients are starved for a different perspective than the media is giving them. So anyone listening to this, the market becomes the story you tell about it. So you should be telling your own story to your market, right? I mean, there's no national weather forecast. There's no national real estate forecast.
No,
right?
there is not.
What's happening in your market on your block.
Now, you're referring to a consistent barrage of appearing on socials, in that being, whether you're on LinkedIn Live, whether you're on Facebook Live, that is at the end of the day content creation. How has creating content developed you as a thought leader, and what has that done for your career personally?
Well, it's interesting because, and it almost goes back to a question that I haven't answered earlier about writing a book. When do you write a book? How do you write the book? I want to circle back to that because that's you taking your collection of thoughts on something, trying to put it into a structure and put it out there. And yeah, as a corporation, I mean, we want to grow. We want to attract quality agents. Do we buy Google AdWords? Do we buy leads? Do we buy email lists? Do we do any of those things? No. I never did any of those things as a broker. I don't advise that any of our brokers do those things. And we don't do those things to attract brokers. What we try and do is, to your earlier comments yourself about the way you run your business, we try and educate. We try and deliver value, what's actually happening out there. And I can get into some really granular stuff because, 1,695 mortgage transactions later, I've seen a few nuances. I can talk about remaining economic life and all these little things that a lot of people in a corporate role in my world can't because they haven't had that frontline experience. But I wanted to circle back. Well, okay, before I go back to the when do you write a book piece. So how I would say it's evolved myself doing a daily broadcast, for instance, is it forces you to not only be in tune and aware of what's going on out there in the world and in your market, it also forces you to get better at writing a little snippet about it. Because basically I write out my script, then I go live, I deliver it through a video, and now I've got a video post, but I've also got the script, which really, that's a potential blog post. And you just keep putting it out there. And the people who decide they like Simeon, the people who decide they like Laura, those people will keep on following you and looking for more and more and more. So it can't be one and done.
That's right.
It's got to be consistent. Yeah. It's got to be persistent. You just have to keep going. And so here's the answer to your question. When do you write a book? You write the book right now, or you don't write the book at all. And it's not about how busy you are. It's not about how much is going on in your world, because the first year I cracked 100 million was the year I put the presentation together and delivered my first presentation of 8 that year. I wound up flying all over delivering this presentation, still closing 100 million in volume. And then the next year, we pushed it up a little bit further, and I did track my hours. I found 500 hours to write that first book. And then the year after that, I wrote not one more, I wrote 2 more books, and they were actually 75,000 word beasts instead of 50. So it was like 3 times as much content that went out there, again, while doing the 100 million. And here's the irony. Now I'm not brokering. Now, arguably, I have a role that doesn't gobble up evenings or weekends really to speak of. And I have not put another book out. I did put a 4th book out in 2018, but realistically, I mean, I could easily have been putting out a book per year, given the time I now have, but I think it's one of those old adages: ask a busy person, and it gets done.
Right.
So I would say to you, if you genuinely want to write a book, do it now. Start tonight, because it ain't going to happen later on when you slow down. And the thing that kills me is every now and then a little remnant of a story comes up, an interaction, a crazy scenario with a client. And I'm like, I never documented that one. And there were some other aspects, and I've forgotten them. We think we're going to remember these experiences forever. We're not. So the more you write down right now, while you're in the thick of it, while you're in the heat of it, while it's happening, and I would say to anyone in the industry, we've all got a book in us, one blog post at a time. I mean, start with a 200-word blog post, short version. Then maybe you do a long version for people that are more interested in a long version. So maybe it's 200 words plus another 400 or 500. And then each of those blog posts, maybe they wind up forming a chapter. I mean, so many realtors out there could write really interesting books, 20 chapters, 20 stories, 5 first-time buyers, 5 move-up buyers, 5 investment buyers, 5, downsizing sellers/buyers. Boom. And those stories would be super, super interesting because we're all fascinated by real estate.
That's
right.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's really great advice in terms of, the ambitious ones like Simi and myself that are looking to get on top of that New York Times bestseller list before we're croaking, at least. Maybe not this year, but anytime in the next 10 is fine. But beyond this, I find it most interesting that while you are, ward to the 1,857 mortgage architect agents and brokers, your Facebook group, Be the Better Broker, has 4,000 people in it. So you aren't just here for the people you're paid to care about. You are here for anyone in the industry, and you're providing value to them. And I think that's a really great way to do things. But tell me about how you grew this community.
Well, I think that Facebook page started in 2017 or 2018, early 2018, maybe late 2017. And, there's another super popular mortgage broker page. It's great for, help with files, scenarios, lots and lots of banter and chat. And it's awesome for that. But I wanted to create a space where it was purely not file scenarios, not, banter about a lender or an insurer policy or whatever. I wanted to create a space for brokers where it was purely about, here is this marketing program I put out there, and here are my results. Here are my results from making 10 outbound calls a day. Like I wanted it to be, this is what I've done that works, and people sharing what works.
More coaching.
Yeah.
It's that tactical and practical approach.
Exactly. And that's sort of the community I've tried to create, like what works. And I don't have any corporate branding around that thing at all. And you're right, like even my daily broadcast, I don't talk about the company I work for. I don't talk about my job title. I don't even introduce myself. It's just broker content. And is it a marketing play? Well, everybody's selling. Everybody is selling all the time. I mean, this is all three of us selling something right now. I mean, we're all putting our value proposition out there at all times, or we're not putting it out there, which is a huge mistake.
Right.
And so, look, is the Be the Better Broker Facebook group, is the daily podcast, is that something that is potentially driving Mortgage Architects, the actual company that pays the bills, Monday to Friday? To some extent, sure, but that's never the primary play. The primary play for me is to be as unbiased as possible and just say, hey, here's something that works. Like, hey, here's my prediction for 2022, which, by the way, I think it's going to be a crazy year. I think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal for the broker side of things. I can't speak to the real estate side, but, certainly the brokering side, I see.
Well, I can tell you with absolute clarity and precision, because I don't need a crystal ball for 2022, that it's going to be a year of like double digit is one thing. I think it's going to be another 20+% in the major urban markets because absolutely nothing has changed in way of streamlining supply.
Yep.
Nothing has changed. It's actually become more they've slowed down instead of trying to pick up the pace. They keep throwing more and more bureaucratic processes against it instead of lightening the load. We just had Tim Hudak on, who is the president of the Ontario Real Estate Association, and he's begging and pleading brokers to write to their MPPs to make affordability happen. We need to get away from exclusionary zoning and be able to streamline the process where investors can create more doors near subways where they can, get those rents down, get more homes out of the current infill sites.
Yeah.
I end a lot of my rants with one word: supply.
Supply.
There's nothing else to it. So unless there's, of course, an act of God, like more pandemics or this, that, or whatever the case may be, money has never been cheaper. And I have you two on the show today. Money has never been cheaper. It's under the cost of inflation.
Or more difficult to get. Ironic.
Yeah.
Psychologically, bang on. Like, money is as cheap as it's ever going to be probably in our lifetimes. Amazing. So psychologically, a very positive boost. And so people get excited. I'm going to buy a place. And then they connect with their broker or the banker and they get the whole rundown and they go, wait, what? I only qualify for that? And that's thanks to a billionaire finance minister and a millionaire prime minister who together put their heads together. And what did they come up with? They came up with a policy that kneecapped every regular Canadian by 35% on the amount of mortgage money they could get. They call it the stress test. And it's pure BS. It's totally over the top, way too extreme. And it does not affect any of their millionaire or billionaire friends. Because if you have a private banking relationship, you don't have to worry about the stress test. That's for the little people. And sadly, I know it sounds like a little bit of a political rant. It's not entirely a political rant. I'm frustrated by the fact that real estate is becoming for the truly wealthy only. That's it. If you don't have parents that can gift you a down payment to help you get in the game, you have the tables tilted that much further against you.
I'll tell you, Laura Martin did an article specifically in the Globe and Mail speaking to the bank of mom and dad that has become literally the prerequisite to buying real estate if you're a millennial, which is very sad because millennials are now growing into society's biggest population slowly.
Millennials are like 39 years old now.
That's right.
Yep.
So we are talking. There's a reckoning coming, and the people behind them is going to be even worse. And that's why to have progressive leaders at the Real Estate Association, at the Canadian, at the federal level, at the provincial level, lobbying to make some of these positive changes happen is so important. And I am going to say that every single broker, whether you're on the mortgage or the real estate side, it's up to you to take a moment and make a difference by contacting your MP and saying how important it is to look at making some change into speeding things up, because to make real estate an elite only game is going to hurt the industry. It's going to hurt communities, and it's going to create a rental only market. Like Toronto's well on its way to Manhattanization, where it's a rental only market. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's not an inclusive society.
No, and it's hurting immigrants disproportionately as well, right? Like if you consider that if the bank of mom and dad, therefore current homeowners and probably older Canadians, are going to be the linchpin in the next generation and affordability, then therefore if you are new to Canada, or if you are specifically Caribbean or Black, you are 47% likely to live in a house that someone in your family owns, not even that you personally own. This is compared to 73% as a whole for Canadians. So it's clearly stilted, right? The line's been drawn, and It's just the gap's going to continue, as you've been saying. So I guess I'm feeling kind of, crushed by this right now. But
Well, it's
what are we going to do? Like, is the government going to listen if we're all, screaming on our microphones to our own
Well, I
clients?
think you just speaking about it right now, Laura, it is the beginning of what needs to happen. Change can only happen when people are aware of a situation, so bringing attention to what you value and seeing your brethren and sistren specifically, based on you being a thought leader and you bringing it to the attention of everyone and getting loud about it is it's a hell of a start.
Right. But I mean, how do we, as a, someone like Dustin who has 4,000 Facebook followers, someone like you, Simeon, that has, hundreds of people joining your REC podcast plus this one, how does everyday people actually make a difference? Is there some way we could form a critical mass? Do we have webinars on it? I mean, beyond our MPPs, right? Like, how do we, can our industry associations do more? What do you think, Dustin?
I think the challenge is getting everybody aligned. Take something like the foreign buyers tax. A lot of people that were convinced foreign buyers were gobbling up, real estate, in particular in my backyard in Vancouver, left and right. And was that accurate? Wasn't it accurate? The best data seems to indicate that about 5% of purchases were by foreign buyers. And then we don't really have great data on just how many of those foreign buyers became Canadian citizens, right? I mean, I know on my street alone, there were 3 South African families and 2 Romanian families. All 5 of them bought before they had citizenship. So they were all foreign buyers 20 years ago when they moved here. So foreign buyers aren't the problem. And here's the real rub in that whole equation. We have in Canada one of the most robust land title registries in the world. It's phenomenal. It's great. And with that powerful tool, what could we have done? Instead of implementing a BS tax on foreign buyers that makes no sense, it was brought in a brutal way. Well, I won't expand on that whole thing. It's water under the bridge now. But it also was irrelevant. I mean, we brought in a 15% and then bumped it to 20% tax in 2016. I mean, look at where prices have gone since then. The tax means nothing. That was just the government saying, yeah, we know these foreign buyers are buying a lot of real estate. We'd like a piece. Give us a taste. Give us a taste. Huh? And that's ridiculous. What they should have done is said, no, if you're a foreign buyer, you can buy one property. Oh, but then people will put it in the name of a holdco. So what? We have an incredibly robust corporate registry. It's very easy to figure out who the shareholders are of corporations. Is there 1 or 2 that are going to slip through the cracks? Sure. But overall, that would have been much, much more effective as far as limiting foreign buyer activity in the market rather than taxing it, which just doesn't mean a thing to a lot of foreign buyers. Why not actually limit the number of transactions they're capable of? And then rather than going back to the stress test piece.
So instead of crushing speculation, because the foreign buyers who don't care are the guys who are just parking money and still watching it grow, which are taking properties away from Canadians. So instead of fixing it, which is exactly what you're suggesting, limit him. Don't tax him. Now you're just participating in profiteering with him.
That's true.
Exactly. The government is complicit in that segment of the problem, although that segment of the problem is a smaller part of the problem. The bigger issue, I would say, we are faced with at this point, given some of the news stories that have come out about the number of investors playing in the market. Well, I mean, am I an investor? I mean, I'm actually going to buy 2 rental properties next year. I am, but those are actually going to be for my kids long term to move into. That's what's ultimately going to happen with those properties. So they're going to show up as investment properties. They're going to show up as rentals. But what's really happening, and when I say me and my kids, this is like really common nationwide. A ton of those investment purchases, they're actually for family. They're for future family. I talked to a client just not long ago. He's buying 3 detached homes for his children who are under 10 years old. But he's like, I'm going to make sure I've got property staked out for each one of them. I make a good income. I qualify. I've got the down payment money. Yep. I'm going to buy these 3 homes and rent them out long term. And then one day I'll, if my kids are good, then one day I'll give them their house and we'll work it out.
And so I did the same. So that's not a foreign concept. I've done it already. I have 2 condos. One is named Sophia. One is named Gabriel. They're actually going to be paid off by the time they're 25.
Awesome.
Right? Yeah. But so you're not really an investor. You're just a family of owner-occupiers ahead of the curve.
Right.
But what the government could have done instead of bringing in the stress test, and I'm only actually just having this thought in the middle of this conversation. I've never really articulated this, so here goes. What I think they could have done, instead of putting in a stress test, which raised the bar so high that it took home ownership out of reach for tens of thousands of Canadians, instead of doing that, they actually could have looked at capping the number of properties owned by Canadians. They could have said, you know what, you're allowed a vacation home, you're allowed an investment property or 2, but at 3, 4 properties, we acknowledge we have a supply problem. We acknowledge it takes 7 years from the time you sign the dotted line on a piece of raw land till the time someone puts a key in a deadbolt in a tower or condo complex situation. We acknowledge we've made a mess as the government. So here's what we're going to do, fix it. Sorry, super wealthy Canadians who want to buy 10, 20, 30 doors. You can't. You just can't take that supply away from your neighbor's kids and leave the requirements where they were, where you still had the ability at $60,000 a year to buy a 1-bedroom condo in Vancouver, which now you got to make $90,000 a year for that.
And then some.
Really? Like, how's that helping Canadians? It's not. Like, the stress test is brutal.
I think we all know why they didn't do that. It's just too much backlash from the people that are, in those upper tax brackets.
Potentially. I think it's actually more to do just with simplicity. Like, what's the simpler thing to police? What's the simpler way to address that? And look, for all my railing against the government, I will be the first to admit they have an incredibly challenging situation. I mean, immediately 50% of the population hates you when you're in government. Just doesn't matter. Period. The end. 50% hate your guts. So everything you say is garbage. That's a tough job to go to every day, where half the country hates you. And then you've got to come up with these macro solutions nationwide to problems that, well, initially it was kind of like, the analogy,
local.
Vancouver and Toronto were the 2 unruly kids and the whole country was being given detention.
Yeah.
Because that stress test hammered small town Canada. Like,
could they even just dial it back on small town Canada?
Nope.
So that's when you're trying to fix Toronto and you punish the entire country, this is what happens. This isn't like it's so clear that when Toronto, the flames start reaching high enough where the prairies can see them, the Ottawa comes out and slaps the entire country around to try and fix one city's problem. Yeah. It's dumb. It's plainly dumb. Dustan, you are not only a pleasure to speak to, we're literally approaching an hour. I have made a commitment to our audience that I am a very well-known tangent speaker. I cannot keep the conversation focused because too many things enter my mind. And apparently so is Laura. And now we have Dustan that you have to come back. You just have a wealth of experience. And your insight, as far as I'm concerned, is invaluable because I am taken away from it. I love speaking to you. So I definitely want to have you back.
Yeah, part 2.
This is going to be the first time I'm saying it live on our podcast, but we did literally just get the stamp of approval. We're going to be, as of more tid of Q1 to Q2 of next year, we're going to be live on radio with Chorus AM 640. Our show was approved. It took a long time to get there, but we're there. And I can't wait to have people like Dustan on the show, ripping value to the hundreds of thousands of people that are on AM 640 every weekend. and getting this non-mass media insight and viewpoint on what's happening out there. Dustin, my man, I can't tell you how much we appreciate having you here, brother.
Well, I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, like I say, I'd be happy to come back, and we could probably do 3 or 4 separate episodes just on the math, like real math. Like, ooh, interest rates are going to go up. Okay, but what's the math? What is, like, let's dollarize that. What does it mean? If they go up and they go up by X, what does that mean to you? There's so many different topics we could
and I love it. And we can. I do have a LinkedIn Live account that was also nearly impossible to get, but I got it. So we do have some platforms, I think, that we can deliver value to our industry on a more consistent basis than just Broker's Playbook being a bi-weekly show. Laura Martin, as always, thank you for bringing such a valuable guest to our show. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your insight. To our brothers and sisters all over the country and the continent, thank you for listening to us. Thank you for watching us. We know you could be anywhere, but you choose to be right here. Until next time, everyone, thank you.
Thank you.